We'll start this evening with Ms. Vergora. Could you please take the roll call vote? Or, I'm sorry, the roll call. I did that last time too. Just take a roll.
Dr. Grandy,
Here.
Mr. Henry,
Here.
Ms. Holbert,
Here.
Mr. Cudis,
Here.
Ms. Lentz, Ms. Vogt,
Here.
Ms. Witset,
Here.
Ms. Witkowski-Smith,
Here.
Ms. Walkman,
Here.
Dr. Marseille,
I'm here.
Mr. Berman, Mr. Darson, absent. You have nine, sorry, Ms. Walkman, you have 8 voting members present.
Thank you very much. Next in our agenda was a superintendent report, but Dr. Marseille, I understand that you're going to defer that this evening.
Yes, what I really wanted to spend some time with is to, I have Mrs. Sweeney, who is our lead COVID nurse. What I wanted to provide, we wanted to provide was some context to communication I sent out to the community with our SHIP in our health and safety plan. And wanted to walk through specifically what some of those were overall, but also share with the board a challenge that we are now facing with the current plan, as it does not provide with the same level of commitment we had earlier with making sure that in-person instruction and limiting the number of days in which students were out of school as a result of COVID were limited. When we were following and supporting the CHOP policy guidelines, they gave some direction with regards to the mask to stay for unvaccinated students. Making this shift does significantly change our commitment to in-person instruction, as the CDC and the Delaware County Health Department, which follows the guidelines, don't have very specific language around that, and they're not ready to move in that direction. And we really don't want unvaccinated students to potentially have 15 days out of the school as a result of that. The mask to stay option we had was working very well for us, and it gave the opportunity to do that as long as you are appropriately masked. In addition to that, when you're thinking about any days out, because the high school is on a block schedule, 15 days does really turn into a calendar month in terms of the time in the block scheduling. So we're gonna share a little bit of what we're thinking and open up for board conversation as we want to mitigate that within the plan. So with that, I'd like to pull up the health and safety plan where Ms. Sweeney will go through some of the points. She's going to talk a little bit about what we've adopted as of April 29th. And then obviously our conversation since the the Delaware County Health Department has officially opened its doors, even though there is a significant amount of work that has to be done. In that, I believe that Melissa Lyons is ready and poised to move that work. I think April 4th was the day in which
April 2nd.
April 2nd. And then subsequently, a week and a half, 2 weeks later, we had a meeting with Ms. Lyon. And there's been conversation, hey, when you have a health department, please begin to consider using their guidance. And we've moved in that direction. And we want to share with the board some of those, and then think about that 15-day out of school for those students who are considered at-home close contacts and are unable to quarantine from their family, which would require an extensive amount of time out of school. And based on where we are and the remaining days left, I just don't think that would be the most effective way of thinking through that. So with that, I've asked Ms. Sweeney to walk us through some of those guidelines and where we are and where we like to go moving forward.
Okay, as Dr. Marseille said, so we're going to review the health and safety plan. But first, we're going to take a moment to look over our mission statement and our vision. So we're going to review the changes that were adopted effective April 29th and then go over our current data. So it would be remiss, as Dr. Marseille said, not to note that the Delaware County Health Department opened on April 2nd with Melissa Lyon as their director. And with that in mind, we wanted to align ourselves with the Delaware County Health Department, which we always said we would do once the health department was available to us. So that is what we have done. They're following CDC guidelines, and that is what we now need to follow. And with that in mind, the CDC is continuing to encourage everyone to get vaccinated and maintain up-to-date vaccination status. So where this impacts the most is our unvaccinated. But to give everybody an idea of what's going on, a non-household contact, someone in school or outside of school, but not a family member living in your home, that individual would need only to test within 5 days of exposure. And always remember, day 0 is the day that you were exposed to that individual. But for the unvaccinated person, if that is a non-household member, they need to quarantine for 5 days from the date of exposure. And then they get tested and then they're welcome back in school. That is the CDC guidelines. That is a large amount for any student, even without looking at a household contact. You go into a household contact for the vaccinated individual, and they are able to return provided that they mask, test in 5 days, and then test 5 days after the completion of the isolation period. So that would be at the 15-day mark, and they must remain masked that entire time. The unvaccinated individual, that is a household contact. Now, this is where it gets a little dicey. You have 2 scenarios. If the COVID positive individual is able to isolate from the remaining family members, then they only need to quarantine for 5 days and are welcome back. But if that COVID positive individual is unable to isolate, which would greatly affect a lot of our younger students, if it's mom or dad who is COVID positive, then that individual has to isolate or quarantine rather for the isolation period of the COVID positive individual, and then quarantine for an additional 5 days, which is 15 days. And that is an astronomical amount of time to lose for in-person education. And that is why we were asking, if at all possible, we want to revert back to our test to stay and mask to stay. So that mask to stay was what we had with the CHOP policy lab, where an individual would be welcome asymptomatic to continue to attend school, provided that they are masked for the 7-day incubation period, which is the time that the disease process would grow within the individual. And for a household contact, we would ask that that individual participate in test to stay, which is your course of 3 days of testing, which is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. At the test to stay, which is at the Spencer House, it's the drive-through program that we are utilizing. And then we allow that individual to attend school. All testing is done prior to them going into the building. And as I said, they were previously in place by CHOP Policy Lab, and we were doing really well with that in place. Now, when you look at what's going on with the BA2, with us using the Delco Department of Health, we are now reverting to the low, medium, and high community levels. So what does that mean? That means that you're looking at indicators of the hospitalization rate per 100,000 over 7 days, as well as the inpatient beds by the COVID positive individuals. So even though the BA2 is highly transmissible, it is less virulent, and they are not seeing the hospitalizations that they were seeing with the other variants. And for that reason, we are still remaining in the low category. So that is why you can see the numbers climbing in the district with cases, but yet we're still in that low status. So just to review, we wanted to align ourselves with the Delaware County Department of Health. We changed to masking recommended rather than masking optional. Where the guidance for the exposure for the household and the non-household member were those that were affected. And again, we're asking the board to consider adopting back to the test to stay, mask to stay. Are there any questions, comments?
Go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Vande.
Thank you. So I don't have a question. I do think that the CDC guidelines that are now part of our health and safety plan are really displacing some students from their in-person education. So personally, I would support reverting back to the practices that we previously had in place that were based on CHOP guidance in this scenario. I think we're at a place right now where it doesn't make a lot of sense to have students out of school for that period of time. And the combination of masking and testing is certainly a reasonable alternative and mitigates a huge amount of educational loss. So I appreciate that recommendation.
Mr. Henry?
Well, thanks, Deb. I had a quick question for you about
Surely.
the numbers. And I noticed they've been going up. And I wanted to ask you, I think I know the answer, but I wanted your more expert opinion than mine. Now that we're back into a lot of our activities, particularly prom, frosh, rainbow dance, prom, et cetera, are those activities driving a lot of those numbers? Do we know that?
We don't know that they specifically did, because in order to effectively contact trace back to a specific area, that individual can only go from their home to that area. They cannot stop at Wawa. They cannot stop at the supermarket. They cannot attend school. You could get it anywhere, even though we can look at an event and say a large number from that area may have been involved. We cannot specifically say it was the event itself that caused it.
So okay, that's fair. I'm going to assume though that it does spread around there a lot, even though I take what you're saying, because they could get it anywhere. If we're going to have this is going to be something we're going to be dealing with every event up and down. So are we, or can we, or are we prepared to do that, the test to stay even next year? Okay, do we have the ability, the facilities?
We will be following the Delaware County Department of Health guidelines, and they are providing information as we go along. So once we have their definitive information of how they would like us to proceed, whether that is a test to stay program, we will follow whatever guidelines are set forth by them.
Dr. Marcy?
Yeah, I want to say that with that said, we will have, if there was a shift to continue, I would have to come back to the board in terms of what those financial implications are in terms of the time for that. We'll see how much, if we can incur with regards to ESSER dollars, but we've already allocated those ESSER dollars to COVID related, but it was not an anticipated cost for us moving forward with that process. But if indeed we are asked to move in that direction, then I'll come back to the board and discuss the financial implications.
Ms. Woodsett?
Yes, I'm concerned with the unvaccinated and doing the test to stay. And it seems like it's our elementary schools that are, the numbers are going up. And I understand not wanting to remove students from the in-house education system, but on the same hand, it can cause a super spreading event where they're asymptomatic and they pass it to a classmate who takes it home, whose grandmother is health compromised, and So we know that kids are little germ bags anyway.
Mhm.
So I'm just wondering if there can be something that's different for the elementary schools as opposed to the 5-day, like maybe 7 days that they quarantine. And because if symptoms are going to present themselves, it will be in that first week time. So I'm wondering if we can separate it out as opposed to just blanket for the whole district.
Well, first, we're following the CDC guidelines, and the CDC gives us the 5-day. We don't randomly choose 5 days. That is set by the CDC. Second, we had the test to stay and mask to stay in place from January to now and through the Omicron spread. And there was no increase with the use of test to stay, mask to stay. Everyone was safe during that time. We would not want anyone to come back into an unsafe environment, nor would we recommend something that would not be safe.
But even though the CDC has the guidelines, don't we as a school district and a board, aren't we able to set a number of days? I mean, it's just a guideline. It's not a definitive.
I understand, but the incubation period of the variants is getting shorter and shorter. So you're actually extending it beyond the incubation period. So the Omicron variant went from where the original, the Alpha, had it as a R factor of 5 to 7, the Omicron was 2 to 5, and this is even shorter. So it wouldn't make sense to keep people out longer for an incubation period that would extend beyond the given times.
Okay. I see.
Okay. Any other questions?
So I'll just say, I too think, I mean, to the extent that we had that program, the test to stay, mask to stay in place for quite a long time, it was very successful. It's been recommended by CHOP Policy Lab. I don't see why we wouldn't continue to do it. We're following the CDC guidelines, but adding that on to enable students to be in person when we found that worked very well previously. So it makes complete sense to me. Okay. Questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, then continuing with our meeting, we are at the board announcements. And so I do want to inform everyone that the board did meet in executive session this evening to discuss personnel matters. And then that takes us to audience recognition, response to items for action on the agenda. So this is the time on the agenda where we give an opportunity for public comment for items on the agenda. We'll have time later for topics that are not on the agenda. As a reminder, public comments are time for district residents and taxpayers to speak to the board about an issue that is before the board or may come before the board. It is a time for us to listen and hear perspectives and experiences from our community. And while we can't answer questions at the meeting, there's always an opportunity to follow up after the meetings if there's a specific question for the district. And we do continue to have a 3-minute time limit on our questions. So is there anyone here that would like to speak tonight about an item on the agenda for action? Seeing none? Okay. Yes. If you could tonight. Yeah, if you could also just state your name and the street on which you live.
It's Ryan Cross, Fairview Road. Masks recommended to me seems to indicate you believe masks would stop transmission. So if we have a policy of mask recommended, I don't understand why we went away from a policy of 2% positivity rate and requiring masks. The goal is to keep students in school, which we just said. So we went to it at SRS and then all of a sudden it went away. Very strange. So I guess I'm very, very confused why we have something that says recommended, and then we just let people do what they want. So, I mean, my goal is to keep my kids at school. My kids missed a total of 9 days as a result of this. They've been masking the whole time. You know, and I think it's important to remember, not every family's like mine that can get a day off from work and still get paid. So I think we do need to give some consideration time for high transmission, going back to masking.
Thank you. Okay. Then continuing the agenda, next item for action on the agenda tonight is the approval of the April 25th, 2022 regular business meeting. Do I have a motion? I heard Wendy, I think, first. A second? All right, any discussion? If not, Ms. Fedora, can you please take the roll call vote?
Dr. Grandy,
Aye.
Mr. Henry,
Aye.
Ms. Holbert,
Aye.
Mr. Cutis,
Aye.
Ms. Vogt, Ms. Witsit,
Aye.
Ms. Witkowski Smith,
Aye.
Ms. Walkman.
Aye.
Minutes pass 8-0.
Okay, thank you. Next in personnel, we have essentially one item for action, but two appointments this evening. So first, we have the appointment of the Director of Secondary Teaching, Learning, and Innovation in the Office of Curriculum and Education, the appointment of Dr. Leslie Pratt. And second, we have the appointment of the Director of Elementary Teaching, Learning, and Innovation in the Office of Curriculum and Education. And with that, we have the approval of the appointment of Dr. Ashwina Mosikowski. All items in this section are as attached or as described in the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Grande. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Ms. Holbert. Do I have any comments, questions, discussion? Ms. Witzel?
Yes, I'm wondering if Dr. Pratt and Dr. Moskowski would like to get up, because this is televised and it's a way for you to introduce yourself to people that are watching at home and share, like you did in executive, a little brief, your vision and your background.
How about we'll take the vote first and then invite you to both come up and address.
We're
the
running
vote?
the same race. I got you.
Yeah. we're
So
with you.
thank you for your Penn Relays leadoff leg. And now you're gonna pass the baton to me, and then we're gonna get the vote, and then we'll have them say a few words,
Okay.
just a few words of welcome.
Any other discussion from any board members? I will just offer that I am absolutely thrilled to have Dr. Pratt here this evening, and to say thank you and welcome again to Dr. Mosikowski. And I hope that all on the board will join me in welcoming them into their new positions. So with that, Ms. Figueroa, would you please take the roll call?
Mr. Henry,
Aye.
Ms. Holbert,
Aye.
Mr. Cutis,
Aye.
Ms. Vogt,
Aye.
Ms. Witsit,
Aye.
Ms. Witkowski Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Grandy,
Aye.
Ms. Walkman.
Aye.
The items pass 8-0.
Congratulations. and thank you.
Congratulations. With that, Dr. Pratt, can you go to the microphone and just say a few words for us, and then we'll follow you up with Dr. Mosikowski.
So, hello, good evening, everyone. I first wanted to say that I'm incredibly honored and incredibly excited for this opportunity. I have devoted the last 2.5 decades to helping students and teachers, as well as myself, think about their interior literacy lives in rich and robust ways. And I'm very excited to join the Wallingford-Swarthmore community. I believe really deeply to the core of my being that our words change and impact us every day. and being invited into students' literary lives collectively makes the world a better place. And individually, it makes each student's mind a more interesting playground. And that's a playground in which they will be able to dwell for the rest of their lives. The work we are doing in education is so important and valuable, and I will work diligently to serve the needs of all of our students and families. I look forward to working in collaboration with you in strategic planning, in building curriculum as experience, and in work informed in equal parts by the DEI audit as well as the curriculum audit. And I just wanted to thank the board and the community because I am deeply honored by the trust that you are placing in me at this meeting. So thank you, and I'm very excited to become a member of the school community.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. So 2 years ago, around this time, I joined the Wallingford-Swarthmore School District community. And since then, I have worked with incredibly amazing teachers and very dedicated administrators. It is truly my honor and privilege to continue working in the school district and to serve the students and our community. I am thrilled and excited to support the vision and leadership that Dr. Marseille has for our school district. So thank you.
Okay, that takes us for time for audience recognition and for comments for items that are not on this evening's agenda. Is there anyone that would like to speak tonight about a topic that's not on tonight's agenda? Okay. All right, seeing none, do we have any old business this evening? Any old business? Okay, any new business this evening? All right, if not, then thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.